morning and welcome to our Business Owners Strategy Forum that we hold on a weekly basis. It's great to see everybody again today. My name is Matt Murphy. For those that don't know, I'm the Managing Partner of Prime Accounting Business Advisory. And we've obviously been holding this session for the last 14 weeks and we've had some really great content and information. And we did this predominantly to help business owners navigate through the complexity of COVID and what we've been experiencing for that period of time. And really now it's about sort of, curating information and knowledge to actually help us as business owners really obviously come out of this in a thriving way and ensuring that we're meeting and achieving our dreams and aspirations, which is fundamentally what we're all here to do. And so this forum, the purpose is about connecting, sharing, supporting, strategizing and implementing information so we can actually have great businesses. So over the last 14 weeks, these have been the topics that we've covered. So some great topics and great information, and we've had some really, really good feedback in terms of what we've been curating in terms of this information. And we're very grateful for the people that have spoken on this forum for the last 14 weeks. So once again, we've got another fantastic speaker today. We've got Blake Collins, who's the General Manager of Sales and Marketing for MYOB Australia. And so I'm really looking forward to speaking with Blake today. He's going to talk about sort of the impacts on COVID so far for Australian businesses, and he's got some data to share with us, which is interesting data for us as business owners when we've got to start to think about, what's going to be the future from a customer perspective, from a business perspective as well. And also how digital transformation is playing a key role and will play a key role in the future of our businesses moving forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Blake for a chat about that. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And as per usual, we've got a Q&A button down the bottom. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, please ask them down the bottom of the question and answer. But so welcome, Blake. Thank you for joining us today. I know you're a very busy man at this particular point in time, but appreciate the fact that you've made the time to come and speak to our audience around sort of what's happening with a business in Australia and what your observations are, because being general manager in MYOB, I mean, it has a significant amount of businesses that it supports and looks after on a daily basis. And so no doubt you've got a great lens around really what's happening in Australia, and it'd be great to sort of get more of an understanding of that and what you also see from the information that you've collected and see what's going to happen in the future. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to you about that today.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, thanks for having me on. What a great initiative. 14 weeks into this thing, did you think it'd go for 14 weeks or you thought we'd just do this for a few weeks and it'd go away?
It's an interesting question. I think that I certainly, as this thing evolved, I really didn't know what it was going to be. And when we first started it, I'm thinking, is it a couple of weeks? Is it a month? Is it, and as obviously things evolved, you can see that, the world's changed significantly since then. So, I probably didn't anticipate that we'll be still doing this now, but It's kind of pivoted into the fact that it was probably a good impetus for me to actually do this, because I think it's a great way to share information with our sort of business owner clients and people that sort of want to engage with this, because it's always stuff that I like to do, and including the fact that I've also got a podcast that I do too, just because I haven't got enough to do in my life and I like to have a bit of creativity. So now it will continue on because we just find that it's a good platform, but certainly didn't really understand what we're in for 14, 15 weeks ago.
Yeah. No, I don't think any of us did we? Look, we've seen many businesses like yours pivot, change, do things differently. And like, this is what a cracking way to educate your clients, prospective clients, on what's actually going on in this, COVID situation, and what are the trends to help us get out of it or help us navigate our way through it. So, Matt, I thought what I'd do is I'm just going to step through the agenda of what I'm going to cover, and then we'll get into it. So what I'm going to do up front is just talk a little bit about some of the data that we've seen around what the effect has been on small and medium businesses across Australia and New Zealand. Then just some macro observations on the implications or the effect of COVID-19 on the economy, the political landscape, some social trends and technology and digital trends. Then a bit about, from a technology perspective, what we think some good ideas to help small businesses navigate their way through and then out of this pandemic situation. Just a little bit about our MYOB Small Business Hub, where you can go and have a look at a whole plethora of information to help you really understand what's going on now and perhaps what's going to happen next. And then I just had a little reminder about mindfulness. It's our month of mindfulness here at MYOB, so I wouldn't mind just sharing that with the team that's online.
That would be great. It has been a theme that we've also had running through this forum as well, because, you know, when you're in adversity and there's a crisis, it's going to impact upon, you know, how you feel about the world. And so mindfulness is really important. And we've certainly had a few speakers in the past in regard to that particular topic as well. So anything that you have on that is well received.
Great, love it. Cool, so I'll jump in. So at MYOB, here's our purpose, right? We believe that our purpose is to help businesses start, survive, and succeed. And it couldn't be any more apt than right now. I'm just going to bear with me, see if I can click through to the next slide. There we go. So some of this data is a little old, but when we consider, you know, the volume of businesses that are actually starting, when we looked at the data that was coming through ABN registrations, you can see that there was a decline from March and into April as we actually entered the COVID-19 period. Recent data shows that, you know, it's been obviously relatively stagnant or in decline when it comes to new businesses starting up. But from my take, I think that is something that will shift and change, that as we come out of this situation, we're going to see more and more businesses start to pop up, particularly around, you know, the whole gig economy. And we expect this to shift as we come out of this pandemic situation.
It's interesting there, in terms of the data that you got on the screen there around the numbers of businesses that are starting. Is that right? In terms
correct.
Of
so they're ABN registrations, yeah.
Which is quite phenomenal to think that many businesses sort of start continuously, which also indicates there's a lot of businesses, as we know, that don't survive past a 12-month or 5-year period. We've heard all the statistics before, but it's interesting to see the new ones coming through and you know what the trends have been. So that's really interesting data.
Yeah. So on average, there's well over 200,000 businesses that start on an annual basis. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. And when I get a little further in around the economic implications of this situation and the unemployment implications, I think we'll see that trend upwards as we go through the back half of the year. Now, this is a really interesting, when we look at it from an MYOB perspective, and we're doing our bit to help businesses survive. When we look at ABN cancellations, you see a significant drop. Well, there was a jump in March where more small business exits happened than were expected, and then that a significant drop in April. We think, and that's also played through into May, and we think that obviously things like JobKeeper are keeping businesses afloat whilst we work through this period. That table on the right and the data on the right just shows some research from ACA, just around the volume of concern about business performance across the SME community. I think that will change when government stimulus packages shift and change in the coming months.
And have you done in terms of did it look like pre-COVID? Is that sort of something that, in terms of the business confidence around that?
Yeah, we do. We've got a whole lot of data around business confidence, and unfortunately, I don't have it in this pack. But happy to come back and share that.
That's right.
It was, if you have a look at the data, we run an annual report around business confidence, and there was a significant increase in business confidence at the end of last year, and we were about to come out and release that report. Then we had the bushfire catastrophe, and 1 in 6 small businesses were actually in Australia implicated or affected by those fires. So I would suggest that throughout this year, obviously business confidence is going south due to some unprecedented experiences.
I certainly have had a lot to deal with when you think about bushfires and then also COVID. So it hasn't been a happy hunting ground for any of us in business since really the start of the year.
No, it has not. So here we've got some data that basically tracks the volume of earnings for customers, and we do that through tracking invoice creation. And as you can see here, the compared to baseline, the graphs on the left-hand side show the decline over the COVID period of time. And I've got some more data on the next slide that sort of shows how the government and the stimulus packages are actually shifting and changing cash flow. So we've seen nearly or over $1 billion worth of JobKeeper payments. I think we found out that was overstated, didn't we? Old slide. So obviously those cash deposits that we're seeing in terms of the invoice volumes have been affected by those stimulus packages.
It's really interesting to see that data, because what we're really seeing is that the actual, and you're seeing it firsthand in terms of the cash that's going to mean cash is the lifeblood, and that was the whole purpose around the stimulus, is to keep businesses going. And the spike that's occurred, and that's been our observation too, that it really has been a good initiative by the government from our perspective to keep businesses alive. Obviously, the biggest issue that we're all considering is what happens post that period of time.
Yep. We are as equally concerned. When we have a look at the volume of cash deposits, and you have a look at that on a industry by industry basis, there's no surprises there in terms of the accommodation and food services industries that have been hit significantly. I think the interesting piece is that over the last couple of weeks we've seen those cash deposits really start to trend back up and closer to the baseline of when we were capturing this data prior to COVID. So the opening up of the economy and the restrictions have started to see a positive trend for those industries that have been hardest affected and hardest hit.
It's good to see that, because people often ask me about, what's my observations, and there's obviously 3 types of, things that are occurring. Those businesses that have been forced to close down because of COVID, which is obviously accommodation and food, or pivot at least. And then those that have gone into some sort of, a hybrid hibernation sort of type thing, just to get through from a, cash flow management perspective.
Yep.
And then there's the ones that are thriving. So from my perspective, it's this is great to see it on a industry by industry basis in terms to understand that.
Yeah, great. I'll keep moving. So when we looked at what are the future implications for businesses across Australia and New Zealand, we thought about what is going to happen next. And history's always a great teller or a fortune teller of what can happen next. And if you have a look at some of the significant historical events that have changed the economy. And I'll just step through these. So, you know, dating back obviously hundreds and hundreds of years to what was called the Black Death, that particular event saw, you know, significant labour scarcity due to the volume of people that were affected through that particular area, resulting in things like, you know, higher wages. The Great Depression in, you know, the 30s, what came out of that? Well, it really started to define a whole bunch of consumer patterns for years and years after that. You look at the 70s. I remember the 70s. I presume you do too, Matt.
Yes, I do.
I was
Thank
probably
you.
riding around on a push bike and wasn't overly concerned about the oil supply, but I know my parents were. But you know, that was when we really started to see the start of, you know, our efforts to look at more conservation and efficiency when it comes to the utilisation of our resources. And then in 2003, when we saw the SARS epidemic and what that really did to China's e-commerce sector, and really ignited a light under that. And I think, you know, we all look at what they're doing now, and you know, that's certainly changed. But I guess the purpose of this slide is that we are in a new normal, and I think about the conversations that I've had with, you know, peers in other businesses that we're talking about, you know, this situation, and the conversations that I'm having with other with accountants and small businesses across Australia and New Zealand. We have to change the way that we conduct business moving forward. We can't accept that or lull ourselves into a sense of security that we'll just go back to doing what we've always done, because it will not. We'll need to continue to innovate to meet market demand and the way that society will change through this
It's an interesting slide that you got there. When I saw it, it's kind of a bit depressing. I think when you see some of the big world events that have, but then, you know, I think it's also great from the perspective of looking at it and going, well, these events actually shape and change generations, as you say, and really, you know, our theme a lot for this time around in terms of what we've been talking about in this forum, especially, is around businesses that are looking for opportunity and pivoting and taking advantage of, you know, a change. And I think that's what you're really highlighting here, is the fact that, you know, look at what's actually occurring and see what do we need to do to come out of this. Back to your purpose statement, you know, not only just to survive, but to succeed.
Yeah, you're right. You do look at this on first glance and you go, wow, that's not great news, Blake. But that's not the purpose of this slide. The purpose of this slide is to say there has been a significant event in our history. Now is the time not to stand still, not to expect that things are going to go back to normal. Here is create opportunity out of this situation.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So when we have a look at some of the implications from a economic perspective, you know, obviously the governments across the business have really started to come in and provide significant support. I think we've got a quote there around $8 trillion of fiscal support across the globe.
Wow.
You know, our treasurer just announced that we're in a recession. We'll see dropping consumer demand in certain areas. Prices will fall over time, and we'll see on the right there that we'll see peak unemployment. I think it was announced last night that unemployment's risen to 7.1%, highest unemployment rate in 17 years. And I think that's probably understated, given some of the JobKeeper and JobSeeker, some of the initiatives that are in place. So the other things that we're seeing from an economic perspective, like when we step back at MYOB and look at it, we expect you know, an L-shaped recovery. We think that there'll be 8 quarters of significant challenge. We think that low interest rates will remain for at least a couple of years. And across the globe, the social divide or the Gini coefficient will, and the difference between the haves and have-nots will probably become greater through this particular situation. I mentioned earlier we had a look at those ABN registrations. We expect that there will be more and more people entering into the gig economy and those smaller type businesses, and we expect that to really start to pick up through the back end of this year. Some of the sector shifts we're seeing obviously increased focus on things like manufacturing, agriculture, health and bio, and we expect to see that more localization and perhaps not as much confidence in heading towards globalization as we'd once thought.
So that's sort of an interesting thing that you're talking about there, because if we can't satisfy demand by importing anymore, for example, then it may start to pop up industries again that have died because of that sort of globalization. Are you starting to see trends?
We haven't as yet, but yeah, I think we will, and I was talking to someone the other day. I think we'll see in the digital space there will be more and more people that are helping other businesses navigate their way through onto digital platforms. It's easy to say and instruct people and businesses to move on to digital platforms. My experience over the last 10 years is it's a fair bit of education. So I think you will see more and more businesses popping up to help that transformation. This is a really interesting table. So, if I think about the people watching this today, no doubt there will be some people who are running businesses where this has actually had a positive effect on their business and their organisations. So, they'll ride the wave, they'll push for growth and additional market share, and be really bullish and aggressive about that. There'll be other businesses that are, more mildly affected and see, things like revenue loss of 15 to 20%. I really like this in terms of the actions that certain businesses can take, given the actual severity or how this has changed their top line. But just something of interest to perhaps sit back and plot your business, and are you taking the right measures to help your business succeed through this particular pandemic?
Have you seen, just got a question coming through from Julia. Have you seen any thoughts on the international trade, particularly goods from China? So is there have you got any data in relation to that?
We don't have any data, but we discussed this as a leadership team, on a number of occasions, and I think it'll be interesting to see how much people, shop locally, expect local product. Like, I know that within my circle, there's more and more people that really want to buy locally. In fact, I've got a study that came out yesterday, actually. So there was a survey of 1,000 Australians conducted on behalf of NBN, and 49% of those respondents said they'd increase their online shopping. Where was the point that I wanted to make? So PwC did some modelling, and the estimates small businesses could unlock up to $49 billion of private sector output over a decade by adopting mobile or digital tech, and more than half of this benefit could be realised in rural and regional areas. I'm not sure that talks to the China piece, but I would expect that businesses will more and consumers will look locally more and more to support our local economy over the coming weeks, months, and quarters.
Yeah, I've actually seen that too. We've become sort of almost village orientated, even coming out of the cities into the suburbs and that sort of stuff. And we've
Yeah,
become sort of fairly parochial again. And I think that that's what sort of, crisis can do, is it pushes you back into sort of your hometown sort of type perspective, which means that you end up sort of becoming a bit more village orientated with your spending and buying habits.
yeah, spot on. Um, this slide talks to some of the changes in the political landscape. Obviously, we were talking about supply chains and the global versus local, and that whole village mentality as you spoke about. We do think that will continue to grow from a local perspective. Here's some data around how companies are actually preparing for to future-proof themselves for future black swan events. Have you heard the old black swan?
No, I was actually going to ask you. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, it's I hadn't either. It's those once in a lifetime situations like COVID are called black swan events. But there's a table on what small businesses are doing to help them future-proof against situations like this.
I suppose what people are really saying on this particular slide, if I interpret it, is to say that they think that this is going to be something that's reoccurring, just like we've had. I know that they're once in generational, but you sort of have things like wars that sort of keep popping up over the years, and then you've got sort of pandemics, and then you've got terrorism was a thing that we've had to deal with for the last sort of couple of decades, and those sorts of things that they almost become, once they start, they become a bit of the new norm. I think there's an element where people are starting to say, well, who's to say that we're not going to have another one of these that looks the same but different, but it's going to have the same impact.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's exactly right. In large businesses, you have business continuity plans, right? So we've got really well articulated plans on what are you going to do when there is a crisis or a black swan event. I think what this situation has done is ensure that all businesses have a business continuity plan, and some of these actions should sit in that plan.
Which is good, because I think that we do become complacent. We do have a risk plan. A lot of us have risk plans in our businesses, but it's certainly when you have to implement them, you can see how good or bad they are, and then which focuses you on making them better, just in case there's a next time.
Yeah, spot on. So then we had a look at the social trends, and I don't know about you, but I'm finding this. I think this will be fascinating. I really do. So, almost 50% of Australian SMEs will work remotely as their new normal. And I was talking to someone this morning, and Slack. I don't know whether you use Slack. You're on mute.
Yeah. Sorry, we don't use it, but we use other tools like it.
Yep. So Slack, they've got 1,600 people that work in Australia. They've just come out and announced that all of those people can work remotely, full time, from home, forever, if that's what they want to do. We put a poll out to our team. We've got 1,900 people in the MYOB team across Australia and New Zealand, and it said, how do you want to work in the future? And most of them said, we want to continue to either work from home or work from home some of the time and come into the office some of the time. We are really thinking about the way that we have sold products in the market previously. We've got large go-to-market teams, we've got a large sales team, we've got a large support team. How much of that now needs to be face-to-face? How much of those services can be provisioned online? And I think what this situation has actually done is it's it's proved what people thought wasn't possible. And if I had said to you, or if someone had said to me 4 months ago, like, I want you to pick up your team of 700 people. I want you to make sure they're all just going to work from home from now on. We're actually going to take that team and turn all of that around in 2 weeks. Make sure that they can service their customers appropriately, and don't change your revenue line, and improve your cost line. I would have gone, you're crazy. But what we thought wasn't possible is possible.
Yeah, look, I agree. And when we did a similar survey, we've got 100 team members across Australia, and we did a similar survey, and we got similar results in terms of saying that. And I've always had the view that we've got the technology to be able to do this, but we probably haven't had the acceptance of it. And now this has been forced acceptance that we can work this particular way, and it is still efficient and effective. The thing that we've just got to be careful about, and this is something that I've been considering as well, is that we've only had a study for 14 and 15 weeks. What happens when we're into year 3, 4, 5, and 6 of this? And I think that's what we've got to be mindful of, is that, what's sustainable for a short period of time may not necessarily be sustainable for a long time. So I think the answer really does lie in that hybrid model and softening the edges of some of the difficulties and the trajectory that we're on from a lives perspective of travel, either that's the commute or that's the international or the domestic travel, which becomes very fatiguing and inefficient. Now we've got we've got the tools and the acceptance of the tools to be able to then, I think, design a better life for all of us, not only just as individuals, but as business owners and as organisations.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's really important for business owners to understand what their EVP, their employee value proposition is moving forward, and to be crisp about what that is in terms of ways of working. Because if you're going to attract top talent, you'll need to be able to meet the needs of your future employees, your employees that you have today and future employees moving forward. I don't know whether you've talked about employee value propositions in other sessions, but I think that given all of the change in social trends, it's a great opportunity now just to step back and have a really good hard think about how you're going to engage your team through this process, and how you're going to advertise and push out to market what your employee value proposition is, so that you're attracting the right talent.
There's no doubt, and we could talk about this as a separate topic for a long period of time. But the interesting part about it is we've had we were early adopters of a flexible working model, working from home. Sort of probably, we introduced that 14 years ago.
Yeah, nice.
The take up of that probably is maybe 1 day a week by team members typically, because they do like to be engaged with the organisation in a physical presence. But what this is, I think that's because of the fact that you don't fully set up appropriately and properly for home. And I think what we've done now as individuals is we've made our homes an environment where it can be a place of business, a place of work. And I see that's probably the fundamental difference as to why people go, well, actually, I can now work more efficiently and functionally at home and enjoyably at home, because I've created an environment that does so. And I think that's probably the biggest shift from the flexible working model offering that we've had historically to really a new way of working.
Yeah, yep. Look, it'll be fascinating. And you're right. There's hours and hours of conversation in this topic. I'll keep moving. So Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, said a couple of weeks back that he's seen nearly 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months, and it has been amazing. What we have seen from our perspective is, the way that people consume has moved from on-premise to online in a blink of an eye. And it is expected, and it will be expected moving forward, that if you don't have a digital means in which to either communicate, service, sell to your customer base now, you'll need to do so for the vast majority of industries moving forward. Here's just, in terms of enabling digital transformation, here's just 6 topics that we think are really important. We talked a little bit about talent before, but what we know is that those businesses that have adopted tech and digital ways are 8 times more likely to create jobs than other businesses. The other thing that we know is that, you know, those millennials that are, you know, coming up and looking for jobs are actually, they want to join businesses that are connected by technology, have all of the right digital platforms. So they don't have to do menial work. They can do work that is of higher value.
Yeah.
Access to cash. So we know that when you're utilizing digital products, you've got you can, you know, do online invoicing, and online invoicing we know improves cash flow exponentially. From an efficiency perspective, we know that digitised SMEs are 14 times more likely to innovate and take new products to market and services due to the time that they've got to do that. So we know that efficiency gives you time in your day, gives you time into your business, and those businesses are far more innovative. We've got some studies, and we've had a look at what our specific product does for small businesses, and we're seeing a 27% time gain when it comes to the menial and repetitive tasks of tracking money in and money out for SMEs. So a real cost and time saving there.
Mm-hmm.
From an e-commerce perspective, and I touched on that just a couple of moments ago, you know, digitized SMEs are 7 times more likely to export. Digital interaction with B2B customers is 2 times as important as traditional channels, and 30% higher since we've been in this situation. And if you're online, you're going to get paid a whole lot faster.
Exactly. Just in terms of you use the term SME, which is small to medium sized enterprise.
Yep.
What sort of, that's obviously a fairly wide bracket.
Yep.
What sort of, how do you define, you know, the SME in MYOBs from their perspective, and do you have different classes of SME?
We do. I showed some of the data up front in terms of the various different industries.
Yeah.
But when we're looking at our small to medium sized customer base, so we've got 1.2 million customers on a MYOB accounting product.
Mm-hmm.
So we think about them really as small, medium, large, and we service all small to medium sized businesses from, you know, 0 employees, so those sole traders, right up to businesses that employ up to 500 people.
Mm-hmm.
So we in terms of the way that we categorize them, it's based on their size and also the volume of industries that I showed previously.
Having that many customers certainly gives you a great insight and great data to be able to, like 1.2 million is a lot in a country of 25 million people.
Yeah, it sure is. But the reality is that nearly 50%, so just over 40% of small and medium businesses do not have an online accounting solution. They are either on a desktop solution or running their books through Excel, etc. What we say to our small business customers is that the best way to run your business is to have your books on a online accounting solution, so that your advisor, your accountant, can see how your business is operating, 1, accurately, and 2, real time, to provide real time data and advice. And right now is never a better example as to why you sort of need to do that.
exactly. And that's, obviously data and information's is king for us, and that's why we had the virtual CFO outsourced accounting model for the last 15 years. So we're
Yeah.
early adopters of that principle as well, because you know unless you've got data, which I call road signs, to know whether you're on the map or not, and that's fundamentally why it's important to have online products.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, there's a whole lot of words on this slide, but really it's there's some themes around how do you actually evaluate your online opportunity when it comes to your products, your services, your customers, your staff, and your systems.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fast forward to a couple of slides in a minute where we've got a whole lot of information that those on the call can visit MYOB's website, and I'll show that in a minute, where there's a lot more information that
Mm-hmm.
you can and a lot more detail that you can garner.
And
From that,
obviously, we put all these slides up on our page as well for everybody to access.
yeah, sure can. So there's a whole bunch of technical tips in terms of how do you get your business up and running and humming online, and I'm not going to talk to each of those particular areas, but there's a whole lot of detail around that on the website as well.
Mm-hmm.
So here is the website. If it's called the MYOB Small Business Hub, and what we've done is prepare a number of business preparedness guides that's been prepared by a bunch of people that are a truckload smarter than I am, and there's daily updates, guides, software training specifically for your business type. But it's not just about trying to flog your software. It's absolutely not. It's full of a whole bunch of information that I think, as a small business owner, it'll just help you navigate the modicum of information that's coming your way on a day-to-day basis. So if you've got some time, jump onto myob.com, au small business resources, and you can have a look at the information there.
I appreciate that. It's good to, I mean, as you say, there's a lot of information. It's about knowing where to go and get it. And really the best way to access that is through curated sites that have actually very specifically targeted towards helping a specific person, like a business owner. So
yep.
That's kind of been what we've tried to do in this particular forum, for example. And also, there's been a lot of generous people over the last 14 weeks that have offered tools and tips and anything that our listeners are needing to become successful.
Yeah, great. Look, my take on this is, for small business owners, arm yourself with as much information as you possibly can. 1, about the performance of your business. 2, what's going on in your specific market. 3, what's going on from a economic and government perspective, and take all of that information and sit down with your accountant, who is the expert in terms of how to give you expert guidance on what to do next. Take that information, sit down with your accountant, and work out what to do next. Yeah. The reality is, I think, having been in business for 30 years, developing a strategy is relatively easy. Anyone can do it. Whether it's a great strategy or not is, by the by, but anyone can create a business strategy. Actually operationalizing the strategy is the difficult bit. So, that's where I think advisors like you, Matt, come in and really do give great advice on how to, 1, help shape strategy, but 2, operationalize, help give guidance around operationalizing what comes next.
There's no doubt it's implementation is really the key to it, because we've got a lot of information at our fingertips and books to read, and I've written one myself, as you know. So from that perspective, there's lots of information there, but it's about how you then implement, and that's probably the biggest key that you're talking about. So I appreciate that.
Sure. I wouldn't mind just touching on this before you boot me off. So at MYOB at the moment, we've got a month of mindfulness, and we have we're working really closely with an organisation called Smiling Mind. When we look at the statistics, it tells us that running a small business is bloody hard, and it takes a whole lot of work to remain sane between the ears and keep yourself up and about in normal times. When you're going through this type of situation, when it's you trying to look after your team and your family and your children and work out and navigate everything that's coming your way, and it's what I've found personally, stepping back and doing some mindful activity helps you, one, remain present, two, remain connected, and three, most of the time, remain in control. So I'd really encourage you, if you haven't tried mindfulness activities, jump onto Smiling Minds. There's some stuff that you can do in literally 3 to 5 minutes a day that really do help you stick in the moment and deal with what you've got right in front of you.
No, it's sage advice, especially this time where we have had it as a bit of a running theme through this forum as well, where and I've also got a podcast with Sarah, who's been one of the presenters, called The Spirit of Business, that we do address this sort of type thing, because it is a mental game a lot of the time, and it's difficult, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So 100% agree, and I'm really pleased to see organisations like MYOB take this stuff seriously and promote it and get the awareness out there, because a lot of the time my experience is that small business owners are lonely and they don't necessarily have people to talk to, and because of that, it's really important to make sure that we support the health of the small business owners, because they represent 47% of the GDP in this country. And so, we're all, the phrase "we're all in it together," I know it's been overdone, especially at this particular point in time, but fundamentally that's what we are as business owners and running the business, because we are supporting the country. And so we need to support each other, and mental health is a big part of that.
Yep, sure is.
So,
and like the last thing that I'd just say on that note is, in this period of time, and really on a day-to-day basis, every day, optimism is your friend, right? If you can, control that voice on your right-hand shoulder that tells you that you are doing a good job and that you are heading in the right direction, and batting back that voice on the left-hand side that says perhaps you aren't doing a great job, and those little demons that come up for all of us on a day-to-day basis, keep listening to the good voice, because that'll help you get through.
No, that's great. Look, Blake, it's been awesome today. I really appreciate the time and the content, the data, the information. This is all great knowledge. And then, as you say, it's about implementation, but it's also about sustainability. And you've covered off, I think, very much well to your purpose about, survive, and then succeed. And I think that that's awesome. And that's what we obviously need to continue to do and support our community. And you guys do a wonderful job of supporting the SME community in relation to, having a tool to, thrive in this, and the digital transformation is part and core to that right now. So, look, I really appreciate your time today. And as we said, the slides are available on our blog page. So we've got a landing page that's got all this and recorded as well. And I'll encourage you to visit the site, to the MYOB site that Blake's speaking about. But once again, really appreciate your time, the effort, and the content, and also the support just in business.
No, thank you, Matt. I really appreciate the opportunity. I think what you're doing is an amazing thing. And I just hope that those people that are watching got something out of today that really does help them and their business and their families moving forward.
Oh, great. Thanks for that, Blake.
Cheers.
We'll see you next week, everyone.